What was like the first catastrophic mistake or like failure?
The first catastrophic failure would be, so this one's a tough one because there is something I want to say. Hey everyone, this is John Ty here, and I'm joined today by my business partner, April Lee. And today we're going to try a little something new for you today. As you all know, we've moved into a new office. You see some of it behind here. We've also, started adding to the team, and we have a special guest behind the camera, Jason, who's our new social media manager, and we've had some really fun ideas prop up for this new year, and this is one that we want to try. So we're going to do a podcast style series here. It's going to start with me and April. And it's going to go, we actually still don't even know what the title of this will be yet, but we know that we want to have real fun conversations and a more conversational setting. And so that's what we're going to try here today. Today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about how Hatch Duo was founded, how it got to this point, and maybe a little bit about entrepreneurship and the journey involved. So with that, I'll let April take over and interview me, I guess.
Yeah, well, excited to be here. And yeah, this is definitely something different that we're trying.
Yeah.
But yeah, for those that don't know me, I'm April Lee. I'm partner. I am director of partnerships here. And yeah, I guess just getting right into it, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself before you started Hatch. Maybe some of that background information would be helpful as context if you're first or if you're newly joining us and watching us.
Yeah. So for those that don't know me already, I'm John Ty. I am an industrial designer by trade. So I grew up loving art and design and eventually pursued this career where you could draw things on paper and make them real. When I discovered that was actually a profession, I knew that had to be the job for me. And so I started my career right out of design school from San Francisco. I graduated from Academy of Art, really good industrial design school, still visit and do guest critiques here and there. Being exposed to running and leading design teams from a big in-house public company to meeting entrepreneurs, basketball players that were doing their own entrepreneurship things because of the network that we were in. So yeah, really cool experience. Eventually, all that led me to want to do my own thing, which got me to Hatch Duo. And there's some things in between, but yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So you touched on that you worked in-house at a big corporate firm. So you had a seat and a pretty, I would imagine, great comp package and everything.
Yeah.
Seems like you had things that most people would kill for.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, and I'm sure others have also questioned, what really pulled you out of that? What really made you kind of break out of that and wanting to do something for yourself and of yourself?
I think for me, it was just the slow exposure of seeing examples of it. So a little bit like at Y Studios, a little bit, even when I had interned at a startup too. So I've had a lot of exposure to startups in particular, and being in the Bay Area, you're kind of just around that and you hear these unicorn stories. And it's not that you imagine that you'll be the unicorn, but it's just man, if other people are doing it, maybe I should give it a shot too. And so that was kind of what it was for me. I remember during a performance or exit interview at one of my previous jobs before Ubiquity, I had told my boss, eventually I'm going to be you. I'm going to have my own firm. And I remember he kind of giggled a little bit and was like, okay, it's going to be a while before that happens. But yeah, so I had always had that in the back of my mind. And I think at Ubiquity, I ended up meeting a lot of really cool people. Some of those friends that I made, one of them was doing a basketball training product that I had helped him kind of design. And through watching him build that product, the company and stuff, I was like, man, this skill that I have of industrial design, this skill of design, it's like a superpower, and I'm using it to serve all these other people and create value for other people, which was awesome. I was still young enough at the time. I was under 30, I think, at the time. And I was like, I kind of want to try something for myself. And so it was just more of an itch of I want to try something. And that's always been me as a designer too. I'm just very curious. And so, yeah, I think in 2016, I just had started to have those thoughts. Lightly talked about it with my wife. She's like, all right, we're probably going to have a baby soon, so let's maybe like let's plan this all out. But yeah, I wanted to take the leap. And at the time, Kickstarter was like this pretty big thing back then. And so being in tech, I was getting a little tech fatigue too, just designing a lot of electronics. And I was into watches at the time. And so I wanted to start my own watch company. I didn't know what that would look like, but yeah, that was kind of the start of it. And I eventually created a concrete watch brand called Aggregate. And that was kind of like when I quit my job, left. But to your point about it being a dream job, yeah, it was. Like who wouldn't want to be the #1 designer, like reporting to a CEO, personal trainers that trained NBA players, like every morning get, free chef cooked lunches.
That's crazy.
Like really good health insurance, really good comp packages, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, really grateful for that opportunity. But I think that was probably like a good point in my career to help catapult me into entrepreneurship, because yeah, I wouldn't have had any runway if I didn't do that kind of job.
Like, what did the reality of starting it really look like?
Like the reality of
yeah.
of
So
starting.
I want us to get a little bit deeper
Okay.
into like
Yeah.
the dirt,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like, I think because there's this whole online discourse about like, everyone wants to start their own business. Everyone wants to work for themselves. No one wants to be the employee. And I think there's a course and a journey for everybody. I've been on the employee side, and now I'm getting a taste of more so as the operator ownership. So I think for those who haven't done it yet, who are talking about it, I think there tends to be a lot of like polished version entrepreneurship. And so I would kind of like to just get more into the reality of it. So what did it really look like for you?
Yeah, I'd love to get into that. I think, well, before, just so the audience knows, like Hatch Duo is an industrial design mechanical engineering firm. We're here in the Bay Area. We do products for startups to Fortune 500 companies, just so that they know what it is. The jump into entrepreneurship is not as clean and glorious as it looks. I fell into it by accident, frankly, in terms of agency ownership, because kind of like what I was talking about before with Aggregate, I had taken all my savings, my wife and my savings, to create this runway for us to invest in this concrete watch company brand. A lot of that money went into manufacturing and fronting the money for that watch company, paying for flights and things to China to visit the factories. After about a year of that, you start to see the savings start to go down as you live in Silicon Valley, right? Like if you live in Silicon Valley, it's like, even if you're renting, it's just expensive. And so that was kind of going on for us, where it was exciting from the outside, like we got funded, but then all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't get to keep that money. I have to use that money to make all of the watches and then advertise for them and create videos and pay for marketing firms and pay for, Google ads and things like that. So like we were just burning money basically. And I had actually started the company with a co-founder, Mike, who eventually helped me start this company. And both of us were like, dude, we got to get a job, because I have a baby. I had no health insurance, like the hospital bills, basically going to the doctors and, for tests and things like that. With a newborn, it's like super expensive without health insurance. And, we kind of did the math and realized like, I think we both need to go get like another job.
So you guys were gonna call it quits.
Yeah, we're not call it quits per se, but like, hey, let's just work on Aggregate on the side while we go and work. I think Mike had started to interview for like some robotics companies. I was interviewing, I think, for like Amazon and a few other places at the time. And then both of us were like, let's just try to, instead of getting a full-time job, which would eat up all of our time and not allow us to do Aggregate, because we had all these, I think we had like several hundred watches we had to deliver, right? And we're like, we're not gonna have time to do that if we have a full-time job. So maybe let's just try to consult, because I was a good industrial designer, he was a good mechanical engineer. Let's try to get some contract work. So we saw some trade shows to go to. At the time, I didn't even know what the term biz dev means, which is like what you do. But I just knew like if I go there, maybe I'll like run into some people and they might need some work and I can do some ID work for them. And sure enough, at the trade show, I ran into a very old client of mine that I used to work with. And he's like, yeah, I heard on LinkedIn, like you're independent now, you're doing your own thing, like a watch thing. And I was like, yeah, but I also consult. And he's like, oh, you do? Like, yeah, we have this startup and we're working on something cool, but we need not just an industrial designer, we need a mechanical engineer too. I was like, cool, man. Here's my business partner, Mike. And then, so that was kind of the start of our first contract work. And then from there, I started to advertise on LinkedIn that like, hey, I'm also consulting doing ID. And then slowly like one of my brother's best friends who had he came out of Techstars, had hired Astro before for his other stuff, was like, well, I need another design firm. Can you guys do it? You know, my co-founder needs this. And so referrals started to come in, and then word of mouth really started it. And before you knew it, I was an accidental agency owner. And so in 2018, founded Hatch Duo, like made it official. But yeah, like in 2017, we were already kind of independently contracting and doing some contract work. In 2018, we're just like, I think Logitech UV Boom was like a client of ours, and I was like, man, there's too much for me to do by myself. I need to start hiring some people. And so that's why we created
small
it.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So would you say when you started getting into the agency working model, would you say, as the founder, would you say that you were working less or working more as a
Dude,
founder?
it's funny. It's like, I feel like I quit my job to work 5 times more for 10 times less, basically. So I definitely was not getting paid like what we're getting paid now. I think there's a lot of initial learnings of like, well, here's the thing, like in the Bay Area, historically, there's tons of design firms, right? Really good, talented ones too. And I would say the Bay Area is like a hotspot for some of the best design consultancies in the world. And, you know, being here, like we had to compete against those guys. And a lot of those founders have come from top places. Like my old boss used to be a president at Frog and then started his own firm. Like I didn't have that kind of accolade. I was just some guy 5 years out of design school. I didn't know how to charge. I didn't know what to charge for the work. And so some of those early jobs, I think those clients must have gotten like a really, really good deal. But yeah, through just like learning, through kind of just reading more books, listening to podcasts about business and understanding business a little more, there's a whole nother side of just doing design work or engineering work. There's learning about margin, how much you need to charge so that you can not only pay for the job, but pay for staff, pay for facilities, prototypes, things of that nature. Over the years, we just got better and better at it. Eventually, it went from the 2 of us doing it out of our living rooms to where we are now. We have a team of about 10 people with the ability to pay for health insurance and 401ks, matching, and all that stuff. I think each step of the way was a huge hurdle for us. Unknowns, making mistakes, costing us a lot of money, sometimes stress of not knowing if we would survive the next 3 months. There's a lot of that throughout the way. Not to mention COVID happened too during that time.
We had some of the toughest years, especially for starting out. I feel like on the pricing value and pricing strategy, I think, especially when you're first starting out, you actually don't know what your value is. And plus, there's so much competition out there on top of other new founders as well, that I think that it naturally comes with time that you're going to learn what your value is, what
Exactly.
the value of your work is. So you also mentioned your first hire. I don't know how you want to like frame or how was that first hire and what kind of lessons did you take from that?
Yeah, similar. And I think this connects back to what you were saying about pricing, because at the time, right, I didn't know how to price, I didn't know how to charge what we're worth. And so we didn't have any money, basically, right? Like, let's just be real. Like we had no money. All of our money was going towards aggregate, making these watches. Mike and I had no money. And
so wait, so aggregate was still operating and Hatch Duo was still operating?
Aggregate was still operating.
At the same time. Okay.
Aggregate was still operating. When we started Hatch Duo, I started to make enough money where at least I could pay for myself. I started to actually have a salary, like somewhat of a salary. We ended up getting like a PO box for Aggregate, but we basically stored all of our watches in our living rooms. And so every time we needed to fulfill something, I purposely moved next to my co-founder at the time. And we were meeting in the parking lot and being like, okay, there's like 10 orders today. Go to my house, pack the watches, get that over with. Okay, now we have a client call now for Hatch Duo. Now let's get on that call. Oh, they're flying in, there's like 9 people. We have no office. Let's go to WeWork and rent a spot to like fake it, basically, that we had a spot. So it was like that for a little bit. But because we didn't really have money, it was really hard to recruit too. Okay, we have this larger client come through, like a Fortune client, and the amount of work that they wanted us to do was more than I could do by myself as an individual designer. And so I was like, all right, I need at least one other person to help me do some of this. But I have no money. So in the Bay Area, when you're competing against Meta, Google, all these tech companies that pay designers extraordinary amounts of money, I definitely didn't have like a fraction of that. How could I motivate someone to work for this unknown firm for some young guy like me who, at least in my eyes, had very little accolades compared to some of the other established 30-year firms that we're competing against? And so I actually reached out to my old school, Academy of Art, and just was like, because I had a good relationship with some of my old classmates who were teachers there. And I was like, hey man, I need an intern at the very least, because that's all I could afford. And I found this really, really good, talented designer named O, Korean guy. And he was just like solid, super hard worker, like exactly what you would want in a startup. Because I think for anyone who's built a startup, it's like, you don't necessarily like need the most talented people when you're building the ship right away. You need like really hard workers, right? Like folks that would just willing to get their hands dirty any time of day of the night. And he was talented too, but he just knew how to grind. And so he was actually like my first hire. Got a few projects done with him, and then eventually needed more senior design management, and Blake was kind of like the next one in line for that. And then eventually I started to shift more towards sales and doing too much of that. And you already know I hate doing that stuff most of the time, so had to hire you, get you in. And then from there, just like blossomed and scaled. Yeah. What it's like now for you coming in,
Yeah.
like you're obviously like a partner and all that stuff, but what was it like coming in initially?
Yeah, I mean, I think by now it's no secret that when I came into this role, I mean, I still don't have a design or engineering background. So for me, it was definitely not only learning the whole industry, but also just, I was also new to business development per se. Like I was more of a sales manager and account manager, which is, similar day to days. But yeah, coming in was really messy. I remember Excel spreadsheets just all over the place. And there was no real like organization. So having to, I guess I call myself more of an intrapreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur because I didn't start this from scratch with you guys, but coming in to build something from within is still takes like the same scrappy, like figure it out type of mentality and energy. And so that's what I essentially came in to do. But coming in, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was very intimidating. It was very like overwhelming, because it's not like I'm coming into like a corporate team where like everything's structured, everything's
and
standardized.
And you have resources.
Yeah, everything's like figured out for you. You just have to follow a format or like a template. It's like, no, you have to create it and start it and like test it, figure it, trial it, refine it, or toss it. It's just like a trial and error, but within a department or within a whole entity. But it was also fun. Like it was also challenging. It was, I mean, I did like another video, you know, sharing my background and like how I got here. But like for those who don't know, like I did come from a software tech sales job, but entirely different from hardware and what I'm doing now. So definitely very, very green. But yeah, I would say that it was Hatch Duo in comparison. Like it was just a lot more stimulating, even though there were definitely really hard days, maybe some bad days, but I think that's just like, you have to take it for what it is. When you go into working with a startup in a small company that's still building and growing, it's just a matter of like whether you're up for the challenge or not. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. But...
No, that answers it. And the reason I wanted you to speak on that is because I do want the audience to realize that there's always like design firms popping up left and right. Like we were just laughing about it yesterday. There's like one syllable word, you know.
Especially now.
There's like so many, but it's just like you see them come and go very often. And I would say like, luckily for us, who knows? Like it could always be a challenge tomorrow to keep this afloat. Who knows, right? But I think part of our success over the last 8 years has been because of the team. Like you guys have put up with me for the last 8 years, but it really does take a team to build something beyond yourself. Like you can't just hold it all to yourself. And I think for me, like for those who are building something, whether that's a design firm or not, it's just like Hatch Duo really started to grow, I think, when I started to relinquish more control and let you guys do your thing. And that has been the ethos of Hatch in the beginning. We kind of had that startup DNA, right? Like we started with Aggregate launching our own thing, but the way in which we built something from nothing, it's in the name, Hatch, right? We always wanted to work with startups. And then that in itself, we ourselves are kind of like a startup in the beginning. Like everyone was just wearing multiple hats, like an army of one, each person. And I think hiring those specific types of people is really key. And if you don't have them right away, it just crumbles very quickly.
So with that, working with so many founders, like what would you say is like the one key quality that you see in the successful ones that you've worked with, either current ones or past ones?
For one, persistence and drive, like a tenacity to not quit. That's number one, of course, right? Like if you don't have that, you're just not gonna survive. So that's like baseline. But then two, something like maybe a little more nuanced would be the willingness to invest in quality value. Meaning like, it's tough though, because with startups, it's like you're very constrained with cash flow. You're very constrained with having any resources. So you got to be creative in how to do that. But you've got to find a way to get the best of the best people working on it early, because it is do or die. So whether that means forking up the investment to hire a quality design and engineering firm versus some Upwork freelancer or Fiverr person, which, I get it, or compromising a little bit of your equity so that those folks can actually be invested in your success as well, because you don't have enough cash. So I think being creative, but understanding you got to get the best of the best people on it and not make those compromises, because you'll basically just fail. I've seen that over the years, and the founders that, and not just like with us, but just like how they do things in general. Like, are they being creative? Are they getting the right teams and the right people on it? And then if not, that's usually when you see them tank.
Yeah, I would agree on all those. I think maybe to encapsulate or add on, and some of it you've touched on, but I like to call it or coin it as like a bias to action.
Mm-hmm.
They're less on overanalyzing and overthinking,
Yeah.
and have a preference to initiatives
Yeah.
and making swift decisions, whether that be hiring or pulling the trigger on budget and for certain investments for certain projects.
Yep.
I think being able to make those decisions is really critical.
Yeah.
For me, like in my opinion, you may argue with me on this one, but I don't necessarily think that there's a right or wrong decision. I just think there's a decision.
Yeah.
And you make the best out of that decision, right? So everyone's going to make mistakes, but from those failures, there's lessons to be gained.
Yep.
And you take that lesson and you keep moving and you keep moving forward. I would say just seeing the different startups that we work with, the different groups that we work with, those are the ones that I feel like end up succeeding.
Exactly.
Even though they may have a bump or a challenge or something came up and they've got to deal with it, but you got to keep moving.
Yeah, the ones that move the fastest are usually the ones that can be the most successful.
Yep. Yeah. So what was the first catastrophic mistake or failure that you took from as you built and started learning about how to operate Hatch Duo? I guess to complete that question, because I want to relate it to like, how has that shifted you and how you operate now? Like what, not just for the sake of storytelling.
So this one's a tough one because there is something I want to say, but like, I'll put it broadly. Early on, my catastrophic failure was I had low confidence that I could do this on my own. I was pooling and hiring people that I thought would be the answer to things very early on. Like this is even before you, April. And the truth of it is like I had everything I needed all along in terms of skill, in terms of experience, but it just is like when you enter this world of design consulting, you think you need to have like certain accolades, certain types of people, certain looks, almost like stereotypes of posturing, so to speak. I didn't trust myself enough that I could do this by myself. And so brought in resources, brought in people, things, spent things that I didn't need. And that has always actually been like something that plagued me early on, where it's like, I'm trying to get the right team because the portfolio looks really good. And then it turns out they're divas and they're catastrophically toxic to the team. It has to do probably more with assembling the right people and the right team, pulling the right clients too. And I think when you're trying to survive early on, you're going to take anything and everything because you're this in mode of, I need to survive, I need to make rent or pay the lease or whatever it is. So you just make a lot of compromises. You hire whoever, you take on asshole clients, you do things that maybe like, I don't want to say it, but you are bordering, is this aligned with my principles or not? But at the same time, my team needs to eat, right? My family needs to eat, so how do we juggle that dilemma? So yeah, I'd say like early on, we've probably taken clients that some are great, like we still have them now, but some like I would never want to work with again.
Yeah.
It definitely costs us a lot of time and money.
That's both client and personnel.
Exactly.
Okay. It sounds like some of that early on, especially maybe like imposter syndrome.
Yeah, a lot of
just not-
imposter syndrome. I think us as a team, we've talked about it too,
Yeah.
like early on. I think for the longest time, all of us were like sub 40, right? And we're competing against firms but we were minority owned. Now it's like, you're seeing more and more of that. But I think like at the time, at least when I started Hatch Duo, I don't think there was any other Asian American owned design firm, at least the ones that were like super successful. Maybe there was Asian Americans that were VPs of design or something. They were like the second-hand man, but like owning it was a little different. So I think, yeah, a little bit of that when you grow up, the way you grew up, like there's a lot of these other forces of your background that maybe play into the imposter syndrome of like, oh, do I belong here? Do I deserve to be here? Even though my years of experience is not as much. But obviously over time, we've won awards, we've worked with really great clients, top clients, and we've beat out other firms for jobs and stuff. So then it becomes validating and confirming, and you probably already know that, but at the time when you're not making money, struggling, then it's like, that's when you start to question all that stuff. And so you make desperate choices.
Yeah. You were just in a different position.
Yeah.
But some of it out of your control. But
Yeah.
again, over time, you just kind of, but I think that comes with experience under your belt.
Yeah.
What to do and what not to do. And
yeah. Like I think deep down though, and like people that know me outside of work know, like I am pretty confident. I am pretty almost arrogant to an extent where when I did tell my old boss, yeah, I'm gonna have my own firm someday, like I really meant it. It wasn't a joke to me, even though they may have thought it was a joke. Deep down inherently, you feel it, but you almost don't wanna show that so arrogantly because you're worried that's gonna ruin your brand or something like that. There's a little bit of that early on, but I think people can tell now it's like, yeah, we're really good at what we do. We know we're good at what we do. The biggest part of having us be successful though is not only the team, but us always reinventing ourselves each year. I think COVID caused us to take a look at things. AI has caused us to take a look at things.
yeah, just overall the market.
And like we're always having to reinvent ourselves. Like I think even you, like I remember like self-reflecting when you first came on, you're like, all right, I'm a business development sales rep. Like I'm gonna just get you deals. And then now you're at a point where you're forging partnerships with other firms and things like that. It's like totally changed. And then same for me, it's like, I was a really good designer, I would hope, right? Like that's what I think. But it's like now, yes, I get to do some design work here overseeing that, but a lot of it is like evangelizing the firm, like writing LinkedIn content. Who knew that I have to become like a writer, right? Or who knew I'd have to like basically take classes of AI on the side again, things like that. And I think that's something we stress to our team too. It's like, don't be content with not continuing to learn.
Yeah.
You have to be in a constant state of like learning and constantly being a student. I think that's been part of our success too, because we're so young, right? Because we didn't know what we were doing, we would do things differently. I think social media and marketing, we did it way differently than the other firms are starting to catch on now and they're doing stuff like this too, but I think we're kind of the first to do that.
Yeah, I think we all find ourselves doing things that we never thought we would do. 8, 9 years ago, I would have never thought that I'd be here. When I have moments when I really think about it, I'm like, wow, that's kind of impressive, what we've done and even individually and as a team. It's cool to be part of.
And it's like, not to be braggy, but just, it's like confirmation to ourselves of like, this started where I was door dashing just to make sure like I could pay rent or pay for like a medical bill while my wife was working like double shifts, to the point where now we've gotten it, like we have a multi-million-dollar business and we've done it from scratch. So I think in that sense, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to like look back and see how far we've come. Obviously, and when we're in the thick of it, it's like, oh my God, there's all these things to fix. And I think like I just had a conversation with our design director and he's like, it'd be nice sometimes if you just say, we're doing a good job, which is true, like I get it, and you guys are doing a good job, but it's like I'm always just so focused on optimizing and figuring out what we need to fix the next thing.
I think the part of being the founding partner and principal and essentially the CEO, you're never not working.
Yeah.
I remember joking one time, I was talking to Cameron, I was like, John is the first person I talk to in the day and the last person I talk to
Yeah.
because it like when you're, especially when you have ownership in the business, it's like it never stops.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the realities that anyone that does want to start their own business, I think the not delusion or the illusion is that yes, you get to work for yourself, but that doesn't translate into working less. And I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of misconceptions about
Oh,
that,
for sure. There's so much like,
especially with the youth, maybe.
yeah. I run
More.
into so many of like my kids' friends' parents, right? They work for great tech companies. They're like, oh, it must be nice. You get to just pick up your kids from school whenever you want. And that is nice. But then I don't think they also realize like if I'm on vacation overseas and you or Blake ping me on Slack, it's like, it doesn't matter where I am. Like I have to answer because it's only something I can answer sometimes. Yeah, it's not something you can really shut off. And it's something I've gotten used to. And I think for those who want work-life balance, that's such a fallacy when you own a business. It's all integrated, and if you can find a way to balance all that, I think it's good. I think I found a good balance where maybe I leave a few hours early to go pick up my kids from work, and so my wife doesn't have to do it. But at the same time, then at night, if there's a call with China's factory, then I got to answer something, or if there's a sale that you're trying to close and me and you are trying to go back and forth on a contract late at night, then there's that too. So I think it just doesn't shut off. And we're not given a choice of when to turn it on or turn it off.
Yeah. I'm sure there are rare cases that some people get to work the 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
I'm sure those jobs or those roles come with a very different set of trade-offs. And so I think people online just tend to hide the uglier stuff.
Yeah, everyone thinks it's like Lamborghinis and Ferraris and stuff when you're an entrepreneur, but in reality, there's a lot more to it, for sure.
Yeah. You could ask yourself, if you could do this all over again, would you? I think the better question would be, do you tell others to do it?
Yeah, I do not tell others to do it, but I also don't tell them not to do it. I think everyone's different. Everyone has a different DNA makeup of what they're capable of or can tolerate. I do think entrepreneurship at the core, like if you're founding something from scratch, it really takes a certain type of person to do that. It really does. So many people try it, they say they want to do it, but they don't go all in. They want to keep their job or whatever and do that. If you're going to really build something that's of any substance, you got to go all in on it. And I don't know that everyone has the capacity or the lifestyle situation to be able to do that. I was lucky enough that my wife was super supportive. Christine was super supportive of it. And she comes from a family where they're entrepreneurs too. I think she can understand that, but not everyone's like that. And not everyone has a situation like that. So yeah, it takes a toll. There's like a non-monetary price to be paid. I think emotionally, mentally, yeah, it takes a huge toll just to get to a point where you're not in survival mode anymore and you can actually try to thrive. But to get to that point, I think for some people, the price would be too much.
Yeah, and I feel like it would be hard for founders or those who start their own business to kind of go back to being just an employee. I mean, it's been done, especially if you feel like you don't have it in you anymore. You don't have the strength or the energy. But I think the mental state, they're just kind of like, this is not what they would have wanted.
Yeah, for 30 million, we'll be employees again. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than like an acquisition, I don't know that unless our hand was forced, that even you would want to go back into a situation where someone tells you when and when you can't take PTO or when and when you can't, how much money you can make, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I think I've told you this before. I've jumped on the ship, so I'll either sail with it or get taken down with it.
Exactly.
So I think once you were, especially those, not necessarily just founders, but those who have worked in startups or culture, I think there's something to it where the energy is just different, especially having worked for another company that kind of was just draining. And
well, I think that's a key thing about Hatch202 too, is like, you may want to talk about your story about like, you were an employee first, and then you ended up getting significant equity in the company where you have like a partnership stake. I know people think about like law firms or dentist office and stuff where people make partner. Do you want to like talk about that? Because I do think for some people listening, like you don't necessarily have to be the founder to end up almost being like an entrepreneur or like, entrepreneur. So can you maybe explain that and like, because it's a little different than just like getting RSUs at like a tech company, or you have like equity at a startup, it's not like that.
Yeah.
Like you actually have ownership stake and ownership decision-making power here. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I think you mentioned some teams initially, especially as they're starting out, they go to Fiverr, Upwork, or that's exactly how we found each other. This was never meant to be like a long-term relationship. I think at the time I was working full-time for a software tech sales company, and I just kind of had so much time in the day, and I wanted to see what was out there, and I found Hatch Duo looking for a sales rep and part-time, and so it fit right in my schedule. And again, I had no idea that this world even existed, what product development was, and what the whole process entailed or what it took. But yeah, once I joined, it was again, it was a very new thing that I wanted to just test and see, and I said, why not? It was just one of the series of decisions that I made early in my career that I was like, why not? What's the worst that can happen? Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to put in the hours and the effort. And it seems like the founders are willing to work with me, even though they know my limited to no experience. But I think maybe, you guys had seen like, okay, she's showing up,
Yeah.
she's at least putting in the effort. And then it just gradually grew into, before I knew it, like you guys had promoted me within like 6 months to a year or something. And I was just like, are you sure? And slowly the part-time became something more.
It's the decision, making fast decisions,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. So I think once I had performed and showed that I'm kind of willing to make certain sacrifices on my end to see how far this will go, I think collectively we're like, okay, maybe we'll just all keep trying to see how this works. And I think with that, the relationship and the trust grew. Also the experience and understanding what it's like to speak on behalf of my team, even though I didn't have the technical expertise to be able to talk super in depth. But I think my ability to just get out there and make new relationships, just as I had with you guys, like we were complete strangers, but being able to nurture and start new relationships with even strategic partners and clients, I think as much as I sometimes feel kind of like shy from it, I do lean more into it because I wouldn't have been able to move from Kansas to California without having that sort of like go-getter, like let's just put myself out there and expose myself to what is possible. And and then I guess it's 7.5 years later, I'm growing with you guys, not just from like a professional standpoint, but also a personal perspective as well.
Yeah.
Was that the question?
Yeah, no, I think you answered it well. And I think it's like, it was just cool to see your growth from like, before you came, I know you were selling SaaS stuff for like, I don't know, several $100, like monthly. It was like monthly SaaS.
The same pitch, it was the same customer. It was just like I hit a wall. And I remember like even asking them for more responsibility because I just couldn't do the same things every day. And like, I think the great thing about, because I think during my early days of transitioning from software to hardware, I would often get asked that question a lot, like, why would you do that kind of thing? No, software is so much easier. And I think it took me some time to process, but I think it was just one of those, like I had said before, it was just one of the series of decisions that I wanted to make, and I made the best out of it. Yeah. And that's kind of how I think of Hatch Duo. It was like one of the best decisions that I made, but it was up to me to make the best out of the situation. Coming in, it was like my friends, my mom, like they were all kind of like worried. They were just like, what is happening? Like, you're not, like even my current fiance now, he's just like, when I first met you, like, I didn't know if you had a job or not. Like, I didn't know what your situation was. But because it was like, for me, it was kind of hard to explain, like, oh, like I'm working with a startup, but I don't know if, from a year from now, if
we're going to pay you.
Or like if I'm going to have a job. And so it was like that. The instability was there for quite some time. Yeah. But I think I had accepted it, but it didn't, my friends and family were non-accepting.
Yeah. But I think it was cool though. Like, I'm sure it's exciting to sell things for like monthly, few $100 at a time to like suddenly selling 7-figure
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah.
It's like a whole new ball game.
It's definitely a different experience. It's a different way to present yourself, present your team. But yeah, it's definitely not an apples to apple. It started off with just, Hatch Duo started off with just the two of you guys.
Yeah.
How have things evolved and what's the vision for Hatch Duo going forward?
So I think when Mike and I first founded the company, the name and everything was like this startup design firm with the duo, which initially was like industrial design and mechanical engineering. That was kind of what the duo was about in terms of the branding back then. Since then, like to your point, like bringing on great team members like yourself, like Blake, some of our other designers and engineers, that's allowed the capacities of like what Mike and I do for the company to change as well. So, it used to be just the two of us grinding and doing engineering and design work. And now that's shifted to a point where his capacity has changed a little bit. Mine has as well. We've brought on a bunch of new team members. And I think the vision now is more, we haven't changed the name because the duo really represents us as a premium design firm with the client itself. So that's kind of the duo, the dance that happens when you do product development. So that's still the vision. I think we still hope to influence the future of design through well-developed products. That's the vision. And we want to do so with a very partnership type field. The same partnership we got from the roots of doing things from a startup perspective, right? Where you're working directly with founders. And I think we still have that DNA today. Obviously, our team has grown exponentially since then. We're still a small team, I would say. We're not super large, and I like to keep it that way because I think we're able to maintain the culture that we want easier. But in terms of, like we have people that are a lot better at doing some of these things than I can now. Whereas before I had to do everything, and now it's like, I'm an introvert. I don't want to go to every single trade show and networking event, so I'm gonna send you because you're good at that. I think the last time I've used Keyshot was like Keyshot 12 for the most part. And so, we have designers now that are using Keyshot, AI, parametric modeling, things like that. So we're getting team members that are really good at what they do. And I think that kind of segues into us with this whole podcast thing, which is we're probably going to start to have more conversations with different team members. We are talking about, we have other guests that we plan to bring on from the team to get different perspectives, whether that's from design director, engineer, intern. We may even bring Mike back for some really fun conversation, or some clients even. So I'm really excited about how our team's grown in that way.
Well, I guess with that, I think this is a good time to wrap up the episode. And I want to thank everyone out there watching. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you join us for the next episode and other episodes to come.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks
so much.
everyone.